people together and finding different ways that anyone or everyone could join in and be a part of it, so that they're not, on the little island that I felt like I was on by myself.
Hi, Anna. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Not too bad. So you're connected to me through Josh,
Yes.
and I have read your website, and you're a woman that wear many, many hats. You call yourself a teacher, a composer, arranger, event organizer. You direct harp ensembles. You have built harps. You're still studying harp, you said. And I get a sense that community building is something that you do a lot. So, can you tell us a little bit about your music journey, how you get started on the harp, and how has that journey lead to what you're doing these days?
Great. Okay, well, I'm here in New Zealand. I live in Auckland at the moment, and I have done for the last 20, 25 years. And my journey started when I was probably about 10 years old, and I saw somebody playing the harp. And was a very rare instrument here in New Zealand. You never saw people out playing harps. So this is early 80s, early 1980s. And I said to my mum that that's what I want to do. And this young lady was singing with her harp too, and I've always been very keen on singing. And I lived about 2 hours away from Auckland, which was the main centre in our area. And I think my mum probably thought, what are the chances of finding a harp, finding a teacher, three young children? And it just kind of went off the radar. So I got really busy with my other music and kept bugging her about it, probably once a month. And I collected pictures of harps and recordings of harps, and still had an absolute fascination with it. And eventually, when I was 15, we managed to find a harp teacher up here in Auckland, find a harp to hire for a few months to see whether I was really dedicated to it, and began a 2-hour trek each way to my lessons each Saturday morning. So I had a very devoted mum, and it wouldn't have happened if she hadn't been as passionate about music as I was. She's not a performer or a musician herself, but she's a very avid spectator and listener, and a great supporter of all things musical. So I was a very, very lucky young lady at that time. And I think I proved my point to her. I went on to study at university, but the thing that was lacking here in New Zealand was other harpists. And at that time, as a teenager, I was one of a handful of young harpists in New Zealand. I could probably name two others at the time, spread across the country. And it was quite an isolated journey. And I think that really has led to where I am today, where I love building the harp community. I love bringing people together and finding different ways that anyone or everyone could join in and be a part of it, so that they're not, on the little island that I felt like I was on by myself.
So, how have the harp scene changed throughout the years? Because that has 20 some years has passed now, and has there been more than three harpists? I hope there are.
There certainly is, and it's 30 years. 2018 was 30 years since I started playing, and I used to look at with envy at the American Folk Harp Journal and the UK Harp Association magazines, and see the sorts of gatherings and events that were happening over there. And I just dream about them. I used to peruse Sylvia Wood's harp catalogue, and I used to tick things and then surreptitiously leave the catalogue out for my mum to see. And it would take 6 weeks for the music to arrive from America.
Oh.
Nowadays, with the internet, things are so much more easily accessible. Listening to your favorite harpists around the world is easy. Back in the day, we had to get the cassette tape out and stop, start, and write down the music and all that sort of stuff. So I think the sources of inspiration are much easier, and our harp scene has flourished. We've got a few really amazing harp makers here in New Zealand, and that's really helped. Building up the harp makers, building up the harp teachers. We've got a good, strong harp society, and a couple of really keen leaders in harp in each area who are exciting the young harpists around them.
Oh, that's fantastic. Now, my first interaction with you was in your Zoom room harp chat. You invited me to attend one. So, for those who are not familiar with it, tell us about this chat and what can we expect?
The Zoom Room Harp Chat started in August 2020. Here in New Zealand, we were really lucky. We escaped a lot of the grief and solitude and isolation of lockdowns. We've had very short lockdowns, and But it meant that we're not getting international harpists and travellers into New Zealand. And so yet again, we feel a bit isolated and a bit out on a limb when we're not getting that regular contact. And as I said before, the internet's an amazing thing. It's actually allowed me to be quite cheeky and get in touch with harpists anywhere in the world and say, hey, I'm looking for this, I'm looking for that. Now, the worst thing that they can do is say, no, I'm not interested. And generally they say, yeah, let's talk about this. Let's Skype, let's Zoom, let's whatever. And so from this idea, I thought I'd love to bring more international harpists into an easy, accessible realm for people to connect with. And so from that came the Zoom Room Harp Chats, and we have one Wednesday a month. It's not a regular Wednesday because generally a lot of the harpists that we're inviting are busy with collaborations and other projects and things that are going on in their currently locked down lives. And so it's a flexible Wednesday, 8 o'clock New Zealand time, and you register, you get sent out a link for the Zoom room, and you come in. The harpist tells their journey and then just starts chit-chatting, and people start asking questions. They connect directly with somebody who's had an amazing and really interesting and unique journey of their own from anywhere in the world. We've had guests from New Zealand, Australia. We've got to be a bit careful with our time zone because sometimes being at 8 o'clock in New Zealand, I don't know, what time did it make it for you in Canada?
It was pretty late, but it was worth it because I definitely have not participated in a similar event before, but I really feel a sense of like everyone were just really wanting to connect and learn from each other, and it's such a good atmosphere.
Yeah, and I think the thing is too is that we often get this feeling that the A-level people who are just amazing and stunning at what they do are way up there out of our league. And really, they're looking for the same connections, the same personal connections as you and I are looking for. And they love to hear our stories too. And we've had guests, Erilyn Jones, who comes back every month because she just loves the connection. She was one of our first speakers. And you know, she's made connections. Now she's a big name in the UK. She's an amazing lady, and she's made connections through this too. So it's you know, there's no barriers, there's no boundaries.
That's awesome. We're gonna make sure we include a link to how to sign up for the chat in the description so that our audience can check it out. And you have trained to become a music teacher back in the days, according to your bio. What drew you into teaching, and what are some of your suggestions in getting children started with the harp? Because you work with a lot of young children in your teaching.
I do. I started classroom teaching at the end of my music degree. I don't think I really thought twice about what to do next. I knew I wanted to be a teacher. My mum was a teacher. My grandparents had teaching in their blood too. And I had started music teaching at about age 13. I had piano students, and I had 3 little recorder students who were 5, 6, and 7, I think. And I look back now and I just can't believe how much they taught me about teaching, because they threatened to run circles around me. And at 13, I had to work out how to engage these gorgeous little people and keep them musically interested while not making it a chore or tedious, and giving them inspiration to go away and do some work and come back the next week. And I think working with them as 3 at a time was very challenging, but it was a really good lesson for me on actually using the people in the group to inspire, using them to educate each other. You know, you watch somebody else and you pick up on things that they're doing, and your brain might be saying that was really great, or it might be saying that was really rubbish, I'm not going to do it that way. And having that choice, that option of which way I want to do it, it's okay to be seeing things that don't fit your way of doing it, and being actually able to actively say, I don't like that, or I don't like that harp, I don't like the sound, I don't like the way that harp feels. And so this has come back several times, well, many times over the years, into group lessons. And I love working with ensembles. I write a lot of, I'm a prolific writer of music and arranger of ensembles. And I love teaching group lessons where even the smallest of things that may not make the curriculum that I've written for people to achieve out of the lesson can be really, really important to the students. Things like, how do you carry your harp? You know, oh, my straps on my harp case are really uncomfortable. And another student says, oh, well, I just wrapped a bit of this or that around it. And the first student goes, oh, you know, and that's just made their life so much easier to do with harping. So I sort of feel those social connections are way more powerful than we could write in a curriculum or agenda anywhere. Making those connections is really important.
I think so. And I remember reading a paper where the author has stated that harpists have way less opportunity in general to play with other harpists or instrument for that matter. So it's very exciting that you're creating those opportunities for the harpists to come together. Now, you run something called the Harp Weekend, where a whole bunch of people will come together and play the harp. Tell us about these weekends and how many people do you usually have coming to these events?
Well, this started in 2001, and it was probably the start of the real event ideas for me, coming into how do I get the community together. I'd had a few years living over in the UK and attending festivals and lessons with other teachers, and you know, I like to always be the student. I'll be signing in and doing classes for things that are not challenging for me, just so I can sit in with another teacher, and because I missed out on so many of those experiences myself when I was a student. When I was a young student, I still consider myself a student. That, you know, there's so much to learn. If you have one takeaway from each person that you talk to or have a lesson with, you're building your toolbox of harp-related stuff exponentially. So the harp weekends came around with a co-teacher friend of mine, Lisa Williamson, who lived in Hamilton, which is 120 kilometers away, and she was my closest harp buddy. She's 13 years old, and she was the one harp buddy I had who we could mix and match ideas together. So we purchased a whole lot of ensemble music, and even back in 2001, it was taking, you know, 4 or 5 weeks to arrive. So we were waiting with bated breath, was it going to arrive in time? And at that point, the students were handed out their music as they arrived. So it was a really intense weekend of bringing ensemble music together for them, and we just acted as at that time, we had 16 students from beginner to quite advanced, and it was fabulous. And so we've done it about every 2 years, and through hatchings, matchings, and dispatchings. I had 2 children in the meantime, and 1 year, actually 2 years, I think, babies were being brought along for a breastfeed in the middle of my break, and then father would take them off again, and I would carry on conducting or tuning up. Yeah. So my babies appeared through all these harp weekend photos, and so it's been a really amazing growth experience for us too. Sometimes we get up to 45 harpists there. We get harpists flying in from Australia to attend. Sometimes it just suits them to come over and have a great weekend with the Kiwi harpists, and we mix it up a little. We have a harp retreat sometimes instead of a harp weekend, where we all head off to a school camp, and we've had guest harpists like Rachel here and Maeve Gilchrist come over and be our tutors for the weekend, which is just amazing.
That sounds fantastic. Now back to the topic on ensemble music. You have probably one of the more extensive ensemble music collection I have seen in your store. What are some of the highlights that you would suggest to, say, someone who is just starting to do duets or ensemble, and then also maybe something for people who are a little bit more advanced? What are some of your suggestions?
Sure. Well, last year during our lockdown, I wrote a series of duets that could be used for across Zoom or online lessons, because my students were getting a little disengaged, and it's ironic because I mean our largest lockdown was 8 weeks, so for the students to get disengaged in that time, I really have sympathy for those who are in much longer lockdowns. But it gave me a chance to write. I wasn't in the car driving to school the whole time and things like that, so I suddenly had these hours on my hand, and so I've written a series of 10 lockdown duets, and generally they have they're about early intermediate level, and they have one part which starts in advance of the other. So what I do when I'm Skyping or online lessons and doing duets is I get the student to mute themselves, and I play the part that has the introduction, the 2 bars or the 4 bars. So I don't need to count in or anything. I just start playing and then they join in. So we can't hear, well, they can hear each other, they can hear both of us, but I can't hear them. And then I turn it around and I mute myself. And it's really interesting because you get to work out who's leading and who's following. And so often the student is following the teacher, but when you turn it around, the student sort of is much more aware of when they don't quite keep up their tempo, or if they do speed up or whatever, or fall apart completely. And they can't hide it. They can't sort of gloss it over because they know you're completely reliant on them to carry their part, to put your part to. So it's a completely different experience to doing them in person. So for my intermediate players, that's my favorite ones at the moment. And I've just written another one, which I've put on my website, for the New Zealand sea shanty, Soon May the Wellerman Come. And that's been the TikTok sensation a couple of months ago. So that's got a nice little Dixie ragtime feel to it. And that's been a really fun one to play too. For mixed harp ensemble, I've got a trio called Adso the Cat, and it's for 2 sort of intermediate harpists and beginner harpist, and it's a journey of Adso, who's from a story. Ironically, now I have a cat called Adso because my kids wouldn't let me get away with calling him anything else, because the tune was so popular with the Auckland Harp Orchestra that every time we did a concert, they wanted to bring it back again. And it's the story of Adso going exploring in the garden, and then he finds a flittery skittery thing and the music changes to reflect that. And then he chases it for a while. There's a little triumphant march as he's caught his flittery skittery thing. And then there's a few bisbigliandos and glissandos as the bug or the whatever takes off. And then he sort of goes, oh, too much, and the music changes and it's a nap, sort of, I'm sleepy now, and that's how it ends the piece of music. So that's a really fun one, and I've taught that to ensembles over at retreats in the UK and things like that too, and it goes down really, really well. And for advanced harpists, actually my favourite one at the moment is one called Ride the Night Skies, which I'm playing with my harp quartet, and it was written on Halloween a few years ago. My father unfortunately passed away on Halloween in 2016. So a couple of years ago on Halloween, I sat down and I thought, I'm going to write a beautiful piece of music for my dad. And it never turned out that way. It turned out about witches riding around on broomsticks and the craziness of Halloween. And it's got tapping and slapping of strings and glissandos and nails and all these things. And I know my dad would have a really good laugh about that.
Oh, that's fantastic. Fun way to celebrate the life in some ways, I think.
I think so too, and I'll get around to writing, his piece for him one day. But Ride the Night Skies is a great piece of music. It's great fun to play.
Awesome. I'm gonna have to check that out. And speaking of music writing, you also write music for your music club, and you arrange as well. Tell us a little bit about your music club and what can we expect from your music?
So the online music subscription club is called Harp Music Club. And again, it came from the fact that I just couldn't access music as a child. I had to handwrite it all from the cassette tape myself. And if I had had internet then, I would have signed up for something like this. It's 3 pieces of music that arrive into your inbox once a month at the early intermediate level, I'd say. Before the lockdowns, it was 1 piece of ensemble music and 2 solos. Now it's 3 solos instead of the ensemble piece, just to make it a bit more practical. Generally, it's 2 arrangements of traditional music or music that's in the public domain, and then an original piece by me, but occasionally it's 2 original pieces by me. Sometimes there's a recipe or an extra piece of music, or some photos in there as well, depending on how life's going. And there's often an extra little surprise, a love song or something around Valentine's Day, or some of our other traditional days or special days of the year might get a little piece thrown in there as well. I've been doing that since August 2017, so we're up to about issue 45 or something like that. And yeah, really good feedback from people who are keen to extend their repertoire with a bit of a surprise music, and they often find things that they're not expecting in there and wouldn't have picked up by themselves. But when you get emailed it, you think, oh, well, I'll just try it anyway. And so they're extending their genres and the sorts of music they would play without even having to go out the front door to get it.
Yeah, I tried because you put a sample on your website to get a taste of it, and I play one of them, and it's not something I would imagine myself, playing, but when I play it and I like, oh, that's a pretty cool sound. I could totally do this, and it's really fun that way to discover music. And you put an audio recording for each song as well, right, with your music club?
Yes, I'm a big believer that you need to offer the students as many resources as you can, because we don't all learn the same way. I've got two boys who are both dyslexic, and watching them, and they're different in the way they each learn, even though they've both got this thing called dyslexia. There's so many differences between the two of them. So I think if we can offer our students as many resources, as many helping hands to remove the barriers to learning, and that's one of my big passions too, that, I say to my students' parents, I don't say to the kids, I say to the parents, look, if it's going to work for you, and you can say to your child, I'll do the dishes if you do an extra harp practice. They're not going to die if they don't do the dishes, but they may just get that extra inspiration. And my kids certainly go, actually, Mum really values the time that I put into my music by offering me this choice. And so audio files and things like that with my kids, with their learning, we have it going in the car sometimes, or we have it on our phone, and it becomes a family thing to actually enjoy these bits of music. And then when the student goes to sit back down at their harp again, they've got another means of self-correcting. If you know it in your ears and you sit down and your fingers don't quite get it wrong, you go, oh, hang on, this isn't right. You don't have to rely solely on the music. And some people sort of tend to say, oh, that's a bit of a cheat, but it's not. What's cheating about it? We're just trying to use all of our resources and all of our ways of learning to get the desired outcome, which is playing music really nicely and playing a wide range of music too.
Yeah, I agree, because sometimes after I listen to a piece, as much as I think I can understand reading the music, having hear it gives an extra layer, like you said, of reinforcement, or help me self-correct, which sometimes can be super helpful.
Yeah.
In terms of resource, one more that I've discovered, you do something called the Harp Hub, and it's available on YouTube, if I'm understanding correctly. And what can we expect in the Harp Hub videos?
So they were this idea that I came up with, Eleanor Turner and Danielle Perrott in the UK, and they've both been really influential on my teaching and the way I deal with my students. They're amazing teachers themselves. And so we came up with this idea that if we could distill little harp techniques or harp ideas into a 1-minute video and put it out there, you could watch that one idea in 1 minute, or watch it 10 times if you wanted to, whatever it took to actually get that idea, rather than it being a 15-minute video that you had to sit all the way through and maybe pick up 3 ideas. So the Harp Hub has been broken down into really small chunks of technique. And again, not everybody might agree with what one teacher teaches, but again, it's a place to go and go, yeah, I like the way she does that. Oh, I don't think I'd use the way that he does that, and make your own decisions about those things. So we're still looking for anyone who wants to submit a 1-minute video. And if you go and have a look, there's loads of categories. So we've got Amanda Whiting in Wales. She's done a couple of little jazz videos on getting swung quavers sorted and her technique for that, how she teaches it. There's a few videos on posture and sitting at the harp. There's a lovely one from a lady in Italy about getting turns for scales sorted, and she does a beautiful video and a comparison with turning a key in a lock. Very, very creatively done. So it's quite an exciting place, but I'd really, really love to hear from anyone who wants to submit a video. Everything's accepted and everything's welcome.
That's awesome. I recognize Elizabeth, and I cannot remember her last name, but she's a harpist from Vancouver. She's in local.
Yes.
Yeah. So yes. I think she has submitted a video for.
Yes, yeah, those are amazing.
Yeah, and Other than the projects that you have already mentioned, is there anything else that we should look out for as learners? Because I really resonate with the concept of being able to access the resource and sort of figure out what is suitable for our needs. So I know you're involved in loads of different projects and ideas. So is there anything else you would like to highlight for us?
I think probably the thing that keeps coming back to me often is that students often want to play things too fast. We have to slow down. I slow it down when I'm learning it, and I will labor over the tiniest part for a long time to get it the way I want to hear it. And I have to admit, as I'm getting older, it's not getting any easier to learn. I think I've crammed far too much stuff into the brain, and I'm way too easily distracted by a new idea. But I think that's when you really do need to slow down and make sure that your fingers can very deliberately and very accurately make their way around that combination of notes that you're doing. And I don't think that matters whether you're a child or an adult. Slow down and get it right slow before you try to speed it up. Because there's nothing gained by doing it fast and incorrectly and sort of flitting over the strings.
And I have one question that I hear a lot from adult harpists. We're familiar with a lot of exam boards that offer harp exams. And we're wondering if that is something worthwhile to do, even as an adult learner. We know a lot of young children tends to go through them. What are your thoughts on harp exams?
I'm a big advocate for harp exams. I think it's a really great goal to work towards, and I've been really lucky. I've been watching the harp syllabuses for the last 30 years, and my dear mum was a great collector. So even as a young piano student, she would collect the exam syllabuses and have a look at the different pieces of music in it. And so when I started harp, she started collecting harp syllabuses. So as a result, I've got a grand collection of what was in each exam level since, I don't know, the 1990s or something like that. And it forms the basis of a lot of what I do for my teaching. I know which level things are at and the skills that are required across that exam before before you move up to the next one. So even for me, if my students don't do exams, and maybe, I don't know, 50% of them probably do exams, that's students and that's children and adults, they still work through an exam-based syllabus with me. And it can be anything from Trinity College, Royal Schools of Music, the Scottish Exam Board, there's an Irish Exam Board. I use Elizabeth Volpe's Canadian exam board. And there's a fabulous Australian Music Examination Board. And a few years ago, my fellow teacher Lisa and I were asked to put together a curriculum for the New Zealand Music Examinations Board for harp. Unfortunately, we don't really have the numbers here to pull off a harp syllabus, but we did the work behind it. And so now all that music's gone into my syllabuses too. So I find it's really, really helpful because, if a student, and I'm perfectly happy to accept a student who says, I've played this for 3 weeks and I really don't like this piece of music. And I go, hey, not a problem. Look, we have this many pieces of music to choose from, and I can find something with the same set of skills, but a completely different atmosphere or genre or nature about it. And you'll still be learning, I don't know, four-fingered arpeggios or something like that, but in a different way, and hopefully in a piece of music that you'll enjoy.
Yeah, I think that was probably the part that I was missing when I was taking piano exam as a little kid. I was told, here are the pieces you're going to play for the exam. And may not be something I like. But I like your approach of, we can switch things up and still find some pieces that will suit your liking and still be able to take advantage of having the structure of.
Yes, and I think I was the same as a young pianist. You got given a book and you had to choose a piece of music from list A, list B, and list C. And those were the three pieces that you worked on up to the exam, plus maybe studies and exercises and things too. And that's where I'm quite different from that exam system. I really push my students to learn at least 6 pieces so that when they come up to the exam, and we don't do it, necessarily in a tight time frame. I don't enter them until they're ready to enter. And so at least 6 pieces so that you can actually say, I really feel comfortable at this level. And some of the talented little bunnies out there go and learn 10 or 12 pieces, and they just rock it when they get to the exam, because they choose the 3 pieces that they know they're absolutely able to play brilliantly. And generally they're so confident that they just nail the exam and get distinction, and they come out going, yes, right, let's go onwards now. And so they've got a really good foundation of music at that level to then move up. Otherwise, we kind of move up like this, getting narrower and narrower, whereas they're going, whoa, let's go up, with a good foundation.
That's awesome. And what are some of the ways that we can stay connected with all the different things that you're doing?
Whew, I don't know, I struggle with that sometimes. I get to the Wednesday before Zoom Room Harp Chats, go, oh my goodness, I've got to issue the. I have newsletters and things. I am not the most organized person in the world, because I have far too many juggling balls up in the air, but it is the way I thrive when I'm working. So I think probably the easiest way to keep in with things like Zoom Room Harp Chat is that you can join the mailing list, and you'll get an email out the week in advance of the chat. The Harp Music Club, it's a monthly subscription, so you sign up, and that just keeps rolling over until you decide to cancel your subscription. And I do try and keep my website pretty much updated. I head in there every few weeks and update that too. So I like having a beautiful, colourful website with lots of photos of all the gorgeous, gorgeous students that I work with. We've got a really amazing United Nations global harp community in New Zealand and outside of New Zealand that all contribute to what we're doing here. So we're really lucky. We're really blessed with it.
That is something that really stood out for me when I was reading your website. When Josh first sent me to your way, I go there and I was struck by how many photos have more than just you in it, and how many things that you have worked on involve other people. And I don't think I have ever seen that many harpists playing together in a picture, or that many of them in the website. So that really tell a story about the work that you do right now as a community builder in the harp community in New Zealand. And I think they're very fortunate to have you doing that work. And I feel very fortunate that we're able to participate in some of those virtually through Zoom.
Exciting.
It is very exciting. It's really heartwarming. So I would definitely post all the important information about your projects in the description for our audience. And if there's any exciting project coming up, then we can just go into your website, hopefully, and find some information on those.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Thank you very much, Anna. It's great to get to know your work and what you're doing in New Zealand. It has been very eye-opening for me, because you would think that I would know now better that of course there's harp in everywhere in the world, but it just never occurred to me that yeah, of course there's a harp scene in New Zealand too, and there are harp makers. So this has been a really good experience for me to get to know what's going on in there and get connected to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for the opportunity. I really appreciate it. Lovely talking to you.